We've looked at a basic storyboard for this small little bit of an animation that goes into a larger animation. We've also looked at some sketch ideas that I started putting together for the background to decide what I draw inside of the program and what I don't draw inside of the program and create in something else and then bring in because of this 1950s type of animated style we're going to go after. So with that done, what I'm going to do is simply delete this layer right here and bring in another one. I elected to build part of the scene in a 3D program because I could quickly move assets around and create a quality of light that I could go ahead and then enhance in Photoshop. Let me bring in a different image right here, and it is going to be the scene as I had it built out really roughly with another program called Cinema 4D. There's actually a lot of free 3D software programs out there if you want to get one, like Blender or something like that. There's other products you could use, like even Poser from Smith Micro, that you could build scenes in to create a little content. Our storyboard called for a table, a chair, a light hanging by itself, a window, a clock, and I had all this put in here, and then I decided to go ahead and quickly create a building for the background. Super easy to do. Now, it looks like not much of a building here because there's not. As you know, all animation and movies are trickery, and there's ways to make people think they're seeing things that aren't there, and we'll be doing that. So let me go ahead and delete this layer now and bring in the full Photoshop file that I had built. Now what I did with that scene is I rendered out elements individually so I could layer them inside of Photoshop. I'm going to say Image. Let's go ahead and add the Room Build PSD file if you have access to that. And move this over so you can see that and click Open. We get the modal dialog box that asks, do we want to import this as a composite or if we want to import the layers individually, and we definitely want to do it individually so that we can animate behind things and in front of other things. So I'll choose individually, back out, and there is our scene. Let me shrink it down to kind of match our output box. I created this at a higher resolution so that I could bring it in and we could do some zoom ins on it for our actual scene without having the detail break up because it gets a little under res. So I created something with higher resolution here. Now we can see all the layers in here. We'll look at that in a second. I'm going to come up to the top layer, which is an automatic bone layer. Anime, when you bring in a layered document from Photoshop, is assuming it's going to be a character that you animate. Well, that's not what's going on in this case, but I'm going to leave it in this layer so that it's easier for me to scale it. So I'll go ahead and scale and bring this down so it goes just outside the little capture areas a little bit. Now with my mouse wheel, I'll go ahead and zoom in. Let's talk about what's going on here and why I built the scene the way I did. There's some things I don't know if I'm going to like in the scene until later. And one of these happens to be this glow around the light. So I actually created a separate little layer just with a airbrush tool in Photoshop and added it to that. The hanging light itself is its own item, and I can turn off the glow and the light. And one of the reasons for this is I want to be able to move some of these objects around in the scene afterwards, in addition to having my animated character, in this case like a cat and the bank robber, appear behind the table. As for the building in the background, I'm not sure how I want that to match up. So if I come down to the layer called Across Street, I can go ahead and grab this layer and move it around to wherever I need to. We've got quite a little latitude here for how much or little I can show with that. Likewise for the table, the chairs, I may want to move it in the scene, and this gives me that flexibility. And finally, not knowing how I'm going to proportion the character exactly, I've got the money here that he's going to be playing with, and I can move that around the scene. I've got a little shadow around it, so as I set it on the table, it looks like it belongs there, but, well, again, it's all trickery. Same thing for the chair. If I want this to maybe lean back a little bit or something, I can do that. There's all sorts of things I can do post-render here before I start building out my character and then adjust my scene elements to match. So in recapping what we've got going on here, I went into a 3D program, added some lights real quickly, and the scene rendered in a pristine fashion. Everything's perfect. I want this a divey hotel room. So I went in and grunged up stuff. I went ahead and made the walls look dirty and broken, gave the windowsill here kind of a grungy treatment. We've got our background item, and I had all this rendered out in layers and composed it inside of Photoshop. You can do the same thing in Corel Photo Paint, those types of programs that allow you to do just this type of thing. So now we've got this background detailed effect that is perfect for that 1950s style type of animation that we'll be working with. And we're ready to go ahead and start working on some of the things we don't see in the scene that will help people believe that there's other things going on, like neon signs flashing through the window that might say motel or hotel on the outside. The scene's going to have a television or the idea of a television in it. And we're going to bring in some elements that will make it appear like it's in the scene, but we don't have to see it. It will complement the audio that will go with the file later on. So there's the initial background setup that we can work within as we create our animation in Anime Studio Pro.